Jehovah's Witnesses have been making children's cartoons for like a long, long time. And they have this kind of new series where this little guy tells like Bible stories about characters. This one is about Abigail. Now, I want to talk about the propaganda tactics used in this video. I've watched the video. I'm going to list out the propaganda tactics and we'll see if we can point them out as we go. Okay? We've got repetition and emotional conditioning. Things like, she's so cute. They say it over and over and over again to try to make you relate to and attach to one of the characters. Moral exemplification. They're trying to depict the moral qualities that they find admirable in this character, whether they're real or not, after trying to connect you to this person with emotional conditioning. Binary framing and simplification. They're laying out a black and white understanding of the world. Appeal to authority and divine purpose. Here's what I've got. By framing Abigail's actions as a mission, it suggests a divinely ordained purpose or religious duty. This is an appeal to authority, encouraging viewers to comply with specific behaviors because they're portrayed as sanctioned by a higher power. Now that they've established that Abigail is this honorable, trustworthy, good person who loves God, they can put any quality or whatever down that they want. And here's the last one that I've got: narrative framing and guilt induction. It uses a warm, approachable narrator to explain Abigail's actions, which creates a sense of moral obligation. It suggests that children should also do these moral things or embody these moral values. Okay, so we've got repetition and emotional conditioning, moral exemplification, binary framing and simplification, black and white thinking, appeal to authority and divine purpose, and narrative framing and guilt induction. Let's watch, see what we can pick out.
Hey there! Making bread sure is tiring. This reminds me of that time Abigail delivered all that food to a friend. Do you know why she did that? It wasn't just for hospitality. Come on, let's take a look. Abigail was on a mission. She was out to meet David. You see, earlier, David did a very good thing. He protected a flock of sheep.
It's establishing this black and white, good and bad foundation, showing who's good and who's bad. Pointing out that she is a close friend of this virtuous, good person. She should be trusted, and anything that we lay down for you about her should be trusted.
Even though they weren't his. Those sheep belonged to Abigail's husband, Nabal. He was a rude and senseless man. In exchange for protecting Nabal's sheep, David asked for some food to eat.
So they're laying down moral virtues and pointing out which ones are good and which are bad, right? And that's fine generally to have like moral lessons in there like that. But when it's buried deep and kind of like you're kind of tricking people into believing it, even if they're good moral lessons, it's still being fed to you in a propagandistic fashion. And they can launder in any moral value that they want now. When they establish that David is good and that Abigail is good, they can now also establish that they shouldn't talk to people that have turned their backs on God, trying to encourage people to disfellowship people in the congregation and not communicate with them anymore, that kind of thing. They launder in moral virtues that don't belong there, that never belonged there. That's what makes this propaganda. And by the way, children don't need things simplified and boiled down to a black and white situation. Children are capable of understanding nuance for the most part. When they're old enough to understand the words that are being spoken, they can pretty much understand a little bit of nuance. It doesn't need to be as black and white as they're about to make it.
But Nabal hated to share. He screamed mean things about David. David then got angry and wanted to kill Nabal. When Abigail found out, she knew this would be bad. So Abigail acted fast. She gathered all the bread and wine she could find and quickly brought it over to David and his men. She approached them with kindness and respect.
Which is how you should approach people, right? That's the moral lesson they're laying down for children. They're trying to form out their personality. Again, these moral values that they've laid down, I don't think I really have a problem with it, but the fact is it's being laundered in under false pretenses, and this is what cults do. They change personalities. Fundamentally, that is what a cult is. It's a group that has an abusive relationship between the adherent and the leadership. And this leadership tries to form out a new personality. They try to break you down and build you back up the way that they want you to be. Now, there are a lot of things that I value about Jehovah's Witnesses. Having come from Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm a pacifist. I don't believe in war in nearly any circumstance. I believe in being kind and trusting people and being trustworthy yourself and all of that other stuff. I appreciate that. But what I don't appreciate is Jehovah's Witnesses programming these ideas into children's heads like this. I don't appreciate them altering their personalities when they're young to more closely fit with what they, as the organization, as the group, want their personalities to be.
Abigail reminded David of all the good Jehovah promised him.
Jehovah was not God's name, by the way. I've talked about this at length, so I'm not going to right now. It was Yahweh. J's didn't even exist at the time. Jesus' name was Yeshua. You could translate to Josh. You could say that Jesus' name was really Josh, actually. So thank Josh this, I don't know, what's the next holiday? Thank Josh next Thanksgiving for all the food. Anyway, I guess I'll go into it just a little bit. The old language, the old Hebrew that was being spoken, when it was written, they didn't write in the vowels. You filled them in when you were speaking it, when you were reading it. So the Tetragrammaton, the 4 words that represent God's name, they were YHWH. The Israelites had a superstition about whether they should speak the holy name. So when they finally added vowels to their language, their written language, they inserted vowels for the word Lord instead of the vowels that actually went with the name Yahweh. Because when somebody comes to it, when they're reading, they didn't want them to mistakenly say the word because there was a big superstition about it. So Adonai was the word for Lord, and they filled in the vowels from Adonai into YHWH, which led to it being pronounced Yahovah, which is complete nonsense in the language at the time. It was impossible to pronounce, and it sounded weird and everything else. And it was a clue. You're not supposed to say it. As Yahovah passed through Germanic regions, Y's pronounced like J's, W's pronounced like V's through the Germanic language, it became Jehovah. Jehovah is not God's name, is the point. And it infuriates me when I hear it. Actually, it disgusts me. It's so cringy.
Jehovah promised him. He was going to do great things for Jehovah. But if he killed Nabal in anger, he'd ruin his close relationship with Jehovah, his best friend.
He was about to mess up, but he was one of God's people, and he understood. He figured it out in the end. Abigail led him to the right path. The moral lesson: be a nice, good person and follow Jehovah's Witnesses' guidance on how to do that.
David listened to Abigail. Jehovah's friends help each other avoid bad and do good. But what happened to Nabal, David, and Abigail after that? Read Abigail's story and imagine you were there. Make time every day to learn from Jehovah's... Oop, gotta go.
From Jehovah's what? What was he going to say?
What do you think? What did Abigail do to remain Jehovah's friend? When have you seen a friend about to do something bad? What could you say to prevent your friend from doing something bad?
And they explain to you what constitutes a bad act, of course. Anyway, that's the little propaganda film that they have for children. It seems pretty harmless at its face, but it's really programming in the personality that these people want children to have as adults. And I don't know about you, but I don't want anybody programming into my kid like that. You know, my mom tried to do this exact thing to my kid, tried to program in this Jehovah's Witness nonsense. And she, about 7 years old, starts telling me she wants to get baptized. And I had to explain to her, like, do you know what that means? Do you know what, like, comes with that? What's involved in that process? Do you know why that would be a bad thing? You know why you should reconsider this? I had to go through a whole process of deprogramming her when my mom was programming her. Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. If you see any other, like, insidious little propaganda techniques or logical fallacies they stick in these things, let me know. Let me know what I missed.